When God provides vision, getting clarity is important. And that often means asking questions. But can you even ask God questions? His words formed worlds, so he's obviously a prolific communicator. Isn't it disrespectful to ask him to clarify what clearly has power and purpose already? It depends. If you're asking questions to undermine his authority, then pump the brakes. But when your questions are for understanding, he welcomes them with open arms and can offer additional details that transform your journey from mysterious to masterful. This is the Daily Recharge, an Endurance Movement original. I'm Reginald Hinton Jr., and welcome to today's opportunity to renew your thinking, align with God's design, and become who you really are. Today's recharge is phenomenal. Ask God great questions. Notice how I described this recharge again. I said it's phenomenal, not prohibited. That's major because it's easy to think you can't ask God questions, especially when you know his abilities and submit to his authority. It can feel disrespectful, like talking back to your parents. But that's not always the case, particularly when you're seeking understanding. That's when God welcomes questions. The following verses made it clear. But Moses replied, "When I go to the Israelites and say to them, the God of your ancestors sent me to you, they will ask me, what is his name? So what can I tell them? God said, I am who I am. You must tell them, the one who is called I am has sent me to you. Tell the Israelites that I, the Lord, the God of their ancestors, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, have sent you to them. This is my name forever. This is what all future generations are to call me." That was Exodus 3, verses 13 through 15 from the Good News Translation. Now, we picked up this conversation midstream, so let's take a moment to establish the context. God shared the bigger picture he had in mind for Moses, delivering his relatives, the Israelites, from slavery in Egypt. And Moses asked a question and lived because God didn't view it as disrespectful. He saw it as an opportunity for dialogue. And he provided more details. That's the advantage of questions posed from the right heart posture. When you're seeking understanding, God unveils. That's a great place for a note to self. Write this down. When I seek understanding, God unveils. Now, here are some great questions to ask God when understanding is your aim. What is this? This is the question a prophet named Zechariah asked here. Then I looked once more and had another vision. I saw 4 chariots coming out between 2 mountains of bronze. The first chariot was pulled by reddish-brown horses, the second by black horses, the third by white horses, and the fourth by dappled horses, all of them mighty. I asked the angel who was talking to me, "What do these represent, my Lord?" That was Zechariah 6, verses 1 through 4 from the Passion Translation. The challenge? Zechariah had a vision, but he didn't understand what it meant. He raised a question, and an angel later provided the missing details. When you don't fully understand what God shared, asking the question, "What is this?" pays dividends. Shall I pursue? David asked this question here. David said to the priest Abiathar, son of Ahimelech, "Bring me the ephod." And Abiathar brought it to him. David asked the Lord, "Shall I go after those raiders, and will I catch them?" He answered, "Go after them. You will catch them and rescue the captives." That's 1 Samuel 30, verses 7 and 8 from the Good News Translation. Once again, we picked up a conversation midstream. Here's the context. David was in a peculiar predicament. His living quarters had been raided, women had been kidnapped, and his military counterparts were ready to stone him. As an accomplished warrior, I'm sure David had a response in mind, but he paused to make sure his response aligned with God's. And God answered. with details. That's where this question, shall I pursue, is wise. When you're not sure if your proposed path forward is the same as God's, pause long enough to get clear. I guarantee you won't regret it. Will you go with me? Let's look back at Moses again. Here's where he asked that question. Moses replied, if you do not go with us, don't make us leave this place. How will anyone know that you are pleased with your people and with me if you do not go with us? Your presence with us will distinguish us from any other people on earth. The Lord said to Moses, I will do just as you have asked, because I know you very well and I am pleased with you. That was Exodus 33, verses 15 through 17 from the Good News Translation. Prior to this exchange, God had given Moses another phase of his bigger picture for his life, because revelation is multi-layered. And once again, Moses had questions. He wanted to be certain that God would go with them as he led the Israelites to the promised land. And God answered with the precise details Moses needed to move forward confidently. When you want to be sure that God approves and will accompany you on a journey, asking the question, will you go with us, is key. That will keep you from wasting time and resources on something he never intended for you. Let's take a moment and recap today's recharge. You can really ask God questions as long as you're seeking understanding. And these questions clear the path for his incredible insight. What is this? Provides clues about the assignment. Shall I pursue? Provides clarity about alignment. Will you go with me? Provides confidence of God's accompaniment. Now that we've discussed the questions, it's time to deploy them. If you have a sense of what God wants you to do, think about where you are in the journey of executing. Do you have all the clues needed to understand the assignment? Are you clear about the next aligned move? Are you certain that God is coming alongside you? If you can't answer yes to any of those questions, use the corresponding question we discussed to get what you need to move forward. As I've shared over the past few daily recharges, wait for God's answer. That's the unspoken key to every conversation we discussed today. Moses, Zechariah, and David all waited for God's response before moving, because it's easy to rush to implement, especially when God is your partner. But it's safest to relish moments for inquiry, because that's when God releases the intricacies that help you do what he requires with clarity, confidence, and care. It's time to make this monologue a dialogue. What questions have you asked God that greatly benefited your growth journey? Let me know in the comments. And I said this in passing earlier, but here it is again. Revelation is multi-layered. That's not just a takeaway. It's the topic of the podcast episode that led to this daily recharge. The link to hear it is in the description of the accompanying blog post. When God says so, I'll be back with another video. Until then, let God renew your thinking, align your responses, and empower you to become who you really are. And when you need understanding, ask God questions. His answers include clues about the assignment, clarify alignment, and provide certainty about his accompaniment. Have an incredible day.